Hi everybody, this is Nikki Jameson again, and I am back to do some more demonstrations with some palette knives in Corel Painter 2023. So in my last video I showed you some of my favorite thick paint palette knives. Now the thick paint palette knives, in case you haven't seen that video, are found in the Corel Painter thick paint category. There are several palette knives. They all have different and quite wonderful qualities, and it's almost impossible to do them in one video. So I had some of my favorites in a custom palette, and I have shown you in another video how to make a custom palette. So you can watch that video if you have Corel Painter, to save your favorite brushes. But today I'm just going to let's explore some more palette knives, and I'm going to try and avoid the ones I did in the last video, and just try and hop around and see which ones. Let's see if I can get my color set libraries up here. Let's find a nice set here. Let's get some nice colors. Okay, so let's get started and have a look at some of these. So I looked at Add and Scrape, hadn't looked at Loaded Rake. So, and I'm not really adding a background to this at the moment. I've started painting on a layer, and in Corel Painter, if you decide to paint using thick paint or watercolor or marker pens and brushes, Corel will automatically, if you have the preferences set up like that, it'll add the appropriate layer for you to paint on. For a thick paint layer, you have to use a thick paint. You've got to use a thick paint layer. So I'm just going to try doing a few. Let's reset this. It's always a good idea to reset these brushes, especially these brushes, because they have different qualities that show up depending on what you're using. So right now I'm using this paper, which is called Abrasion, and this is a brush. These palette knives pick up the grain of the paper. Now if I wanted to increase that and get some interest there, I could do that. Let's just bring another color in here. So these brushes aren't as grainy as the previous brushes I was using, but they are in the same family. So they have this short edge, and the way to use them is with short, sharp, directional strokes. And by the way, I want to I'll do a lot of resetting, and so I see what the brushes are doing, so you just have to follow along. It's a good idea to reset the brushes, but really I'm just doing this abstract stuff here, abstract painting. I'm just trying to use some of these colors. So this brush is the Loaded Rake, and I quite like the Loaded Rake. Heavy Loaded. Now Heavy Loaded, I'm just going to show you, this is it in its fairly large state. Just going to undo that. I'm going to reset Heavy Loaded, and basically what this does is loads up with a lot of paint, so it's fairly thick. And the way I would probably use this is I would put that paint down, and then I would use something like maybe Grainy Edge, which I promised I wouldn't use these brushes. Maybe Grainy Edge, and I would just sort of scrape that paint down. So with a combination of brushes, and I have actually shown you Grainy Edge at length in my previous video, but that's how I would use that. So I'm going to go back to Heavy Texture very briefly. Let's get a contrasting color. So Heavy Texture, it is a textury knife, and actually I think it works better with some of the other papers. So always remember, let's go to linen. Corel Painter has a very, very good paper library. I am using some papers called, I don't even know what they're called now, but I got them recently, and I like to kind of just try the brushes out. And this one is called Linen. I'm going to try it with another brush other than Heavy Loaded. Now, if I try Blender, that should tell you by the name, it will blend those strokes. And in fact, it's unlikely it's that big. But here it is blending. And if I want to actually, I could reduce the paint load and make it less paint going on the brush. I can increase the wetness of the brush, and I can increase the blending. So the resaturation amount is 5%. Okay, and if I hover there, it will show me what will happen there. I can control the amount of color that is replenished, and I can, you know, control the blending. So this is mostly putting down paint, it's not really blending. And if I reset it back to its default, you can see it's starting to blend there. Loaded small. I'm going to use this color, and this is a really kind of nice brush. I would use it very, very small strokes, not long strokes at all. And it's basically loads a lot of paint, and then you can actually blend in with that paint. Okay, that's a loaded one. Okay, now you can always go to any of your blender brushes, blend, and then reloads the paint. And then loaded scalloped, I believe this is a very, very nice. Let's reset it. Let's have this red. So this has an even sharper, more bristly stroke. Oh, why am I using that? I'm not sure I like this linen. It's very fine. I'm kind of used to using a very nice, rather toothy texture here. But if I paint upwards with this brush, it goes on very differently to when I'm painting downwards with it. So this is a brush, it's kind of like a scallop knife, and if you use it on its side, you get like a thin stroke, which is very, very nice. I've kind of left my flower behind in the dust, but this is what this stroke does. Okay, loaded scallop. Small. It's here, small. Now small is a nice brush. This is a brush which is picking up a lot of texture here, which I like, and I did change the angle a little bit to bring that in. So set it. So yeah, this is a kind of like a thick and thin brush actually, and almost like a sketch brush. It's a really nice one. I like that one. That's small. Dry scalloped. This is one of my favourites. I've marked it. Has a fairly wide stroke. Let's reset it to its default, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't that wide. Oh, I wonder if it's just a blending. That's interesting. That's very interesting. I'm just wondering. Let's change the paper and see what happens. Let's change it to mixed media. Let's go to mixed media, see what we get. Oh, that hasn't changed that one very much. Bleed is 100%. Let's reduce the bleed a bit and see. Oh, if I reduce the bleed, it actually kind of removes the paint. Oh, it flattens it out. Oh, look at that. Ah, now this is interesting. I love discovering things like this. If I put it on its side, that means I have to change it to rotation. So I believe it's on bearing. Now if I make it a side brush, I can actually scrape paint that is down. This is I love to get this effect. It's not very easy to get. You have to know the brushes that do it. But I can clearly create texture by scraping, or rather brushing the paint. So, and if I keep doing that, I can almost remove all that paint and colour, and I can get a really, really nice texture-y effect, helped by the paper, of course. So I'm not applying a lot of pressure, but I am applying repeated strokes, almost scraping the paint away, which is very interesting. I like that. Oh, it's already a favourite. Okay, this is an adventure in exploration. You just never know what you will find, even if you think you know what these brushes do. Okay, that's dry scallop, so it gives that dry effect. Eraser is quite self-explanatory. You can erase, so you can remove sections of the paint. I would use this really kind of sparingly, but you can get a pretty good effect. But remember, it does really erase. So if you want to, just create a really interesting effects there, very easy to do with that. Always good to have an eraser, and Corel has a lot of erasers. You can get that in the eraser section as well. Okay, dry pointer we've looked at. Add paint. I think add paint, I'm going to just do this and reset it, because if I can add paint, it adds it really thickly. This is really nice. It's almost 3D like. Where's the impasto? The impasto's not that high up. So I'm just going to add this paint. I think I've used this in a painting before. It's amazing. It's an amazing brush. But what I want to try and do is use the dry scalloped and see what we get. We can blend it in. Let's reset it. Now we've got to be careful with the angle with this dry scalloped. But if I go back and forth, I can remove a lot of that paint and sort of brush it off or brush it away. So depending on what you want to do, you would add, what did we use last? You would probably add paint. I would probably reduce that depth, that's a lot. Add paint, and then go to your dry scalloped, and just quick strokes. You could leave some of the paint there, get a nice texture effect. So you could keep doing that. Let's just make that a little bit bigger. You want to be careful so you don't get too much of a digital look, which can sometimes happen with some of these brushes, but overall they're great. I mean, for abstracts like this is really quite good. So this is using this paper called Mixed Media, so a really nice effect there. That's dry scalloped. I've done eraser, dry pointed, add paint, basic. Let's look at chipped. How are we doing for time? 14. Okay, so chipped. Where are we? Let's go for this pink. Chipped is almost like a rake brush. Unless if I reset it and I've got it on another setting. So this is kind of an interesting brush. Again, I would use it to lay down paint, and then I would look for a brush to kind of maybe, oh, that's heavy texture. Interesting. So heavy texture just pulls that, even though I'm pulling it down. Look for a brush to kind of pull the paint down. Okay, that's what I would do with that one. Let's go back to chipped and see. So if we put the paint down and then pull it, it leaves this ridged effect. I'd use that one sparingly. It's nice, but yeah, I would use that for some sort of abstract. It's kind of good. I like that. And then dab. Dab. Okay, so these are really, this is a thick palette knife where you literally dab it on. It's a thick paint brush, no doubt. They're all thick paint, but they all have their different characteristics. Now I'm going to change this to scratchy again, because with scratchy you get more of a texture effect, which I really like. I'm really a fan of the more texture the better in my book. But that's not everybody's cup of tea. But you can see what it's doing here, and it has some very nice color variability. Okay, so that is dab. I'm trying to see which other ones we can get here. I want to try Jittery, because I kind of like jitter brushes. I'm going to reset it. And yeah, Jittery is a nice brush. Let's try this. You can get some straight down strokes, which is quite fairly nice. It's not a wet brush, but it is a brush that has jitter. And if I change it's on random. Let's try what here's on rotation. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see how I can drag this paint to give this effect, or this interesting stroke. And don't forget, you can choose blending brushes to, so this is laying down paint here. Bleed is 30%, grain is 7%. I want to, resaturation's 40, let's take the resaturation down. Okay, so bleed will mean it won't sort of blend with the underlying paint as much, and it's inversely proportional. So you can see it's putting it on more on top of the paint, whereas if I move the bleed up, then I will get a little bit more of a blend. Okay, which is more what I'm looking for. So it's going to, I put two colors of paint there down, and increasing the bleed increases how much it blends. So that's very useful to remember, to know and to remember. Kind of like that. Just sweep that out. So that is a very nice brush. Jittery. I marked that one to come back to it later. Linear. We're running out of space, but linear is quite self-explanatory. You can use it for sketching. It's kind of like a very sharp brush, but you could use it to put like a very dark line here. It's always useful to have these brushes, but I think you'll probably find that you'll have your own favourite sketching brushes, and you want to be careful with this because it does leave a raised, it has impasto, right? And you might not like the amount of impasto it leaves, so beware of that. Mix and blend, I think we looked at. Streaky, and I just want to see which other one we can look at here. Maybe we'll come back and do that. Let's see. Organic. Organic is a nice brush. Let's just paint over this. But it is a really thick paint brush, which I would use it for, maybe you can use it for petals. It leaves a lot of paint, and I'm going to change the paper. I think we've used that one before. It's almost like a wet brush, but it is a thick paint brush. And again, what I would do with this one, I'll put the paint down and then I would look for something to kind of blend it. It's really an interesting brush, but it's very oily brush. Alright, and then I'm going to try Streaky, which is basically putting down a streak of paint. And again, these should be really short strokes. I'm doing a lot of long strokes here, which is not really what these brushes are good at. They're good at short, sharp strokes, blending them and then laying down more. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. I think we've looked at quite a few of these thick paint brushes, these palette knife brushes. They're a very, very interesting set of brushes. I do encourage you to try them out and paint some abstracts and blend and then see what else you can get from them. Thank you for watching this video. I hope I will see you in another video. Please do check out the rest of the videos on my channel, and I will see you in another video. Take care. Bye.